lights went out in the basement, and I couldn't wake up. The lights went out in the basement, and I couldn't wake up. That sentence kept looping at the edge of my thought, as if someone had left a door ajar between sleep and daylight. I remember standing at the top of the stairs, with one hand on the banister, the air smelling faintly of oil and old paper, and feeling an old, familiar fog press behind my eyes. It wasn't sudden like a power cut. It was the soft, patient slide of the day retreating. I blinked, and the basement stayed patient and dark, as if it had been waiting for me to decide whether to cross its threshold. I went down because my feet already knew the way. The house was oddly domestic and wrong. Cups on the counter like proof of someone else's routine. A chair turned just so. My phone screen glowed 3:13. The battery icon taunted me with a full bar that felt unearned. Each step made a small, private sound, a ritual creak I had always attributed to the house settling. Tonight the creaks answered me back, offset by a faint, steady hum that I couldn't place. It felt like walking into a place that remembered me differently than I remembered it. At the foot of the stairs, the light switch was a pale thumbprint on the wall, porcelain hairline cracks, a metallic click that used to feel reassuring. I flipped it and waited, not really expecting anything. The bulb did nothing. Instead, there came a smaller sound from further in the room, a soft clink like a coin on wood, and then silence that was not empty, but expectant, like a held breath. I realized the dark was layered. There was the black of the room and another black that seemed to hang just behind my awareness, as if the basement wore a shadow even the bulb could not reach. I found the brass key soon after. It lay on the second tread, dull as if it had been waiting for a hand. There was nothing attached to it, no tag, no telltale loop of string. When I picked it up, it felt warmer than the air, heavy enough to be honest. My first thought was practical, maybe the attic, a shed. My second thought was less tidy. Why would I have put a key like this where I could trip on it? Keys carry intention. Finding one where you could have done this by accident feels like being handed an accusation in a voice you recognize. There had been small evidence of wrongness for weeks. A pair of shoes I never owned by the back door. A lamp I thought I'd left upstairs found assembled and lit downstairs. I blamed sleepwalking at first, those foggy, partial lives we live as the brain rearranges itself. But sleepwalking leaves traces that make sense in the morning. These traces were inverted. They fit like puzzle pieces that should have been elsewhere, as though someone had learned which corners of my life were private, and moved things just enough to prove it could. On a shelf, propped against a jar of nails, was a small hand mirror. The glass held a dull sheen, the silver backing scratched in a web. I brought it up to my face and felt the shape of something like recognition. My reflection lagged behind the movement of my lips by a fraction that tasted wrong, like two clocks set to slightly different times. It wasn't a jump scare misinterpretation. It was the slow, impossible widening of a seam. For a moment, I watched my own mouth move as if it were in a foreign film. And I, the translator, was witness. I dug for evidence, phone recordings, a note, anything that would tell me I had been down here and left a breadcrumb. My phone balked. Messages failed to send. The recorder app swallowed minutes and returned nothing more than a flat, patient hiss. Then I found the old tape recorder among the tools, its plastic shell a matte, familiar shape. A faint red light glowed, as if someone had left it perched between on and off. When I thumbed play, the sound was an ocean of static, with a pattern under the noise. The same hum I'd heard on the stairs, as if the basement recorded its own waiting. I tried to test the waking, pinched myself hard enough to see stars, and heard the whisper of skin. The feeling that always proves you're here was annoyingly muted, like a radio turned far away. Panic, at first, ticked at the edges, but then a quieter, more curious attention took over. If you could not fully wake, what could you do? You could look, you could mark, you could leave a signature the next morning. I wanted to prove the experience was not an invention, to hand the morning an irrefutable ledger of what had been done when I wasn't looking. That ledger arrived in the form of a small, spiral notebook tucked under a coil of twine. The handwriting was mine, so ordinary I could hear the angle of the pen in the letters, and the sentence on the top line read, "When you go down, don't wake up." The script was neat, impatient. My throat tightened in a way I couldn't control. The note was not a joke. It carried both instruction and comfort, as if whoever had written it had also wanted to be reassured. Whoever had been down here had expected me to return, and had left a clause in our shared silence. The house responded to that sentence like a patient animal. The floorboards echoed a footstep that wasn't mine, or perhaps it was the echo dragging behind me by a breath. Shadows moved like a delayed playback of earlier gestures. A chair rocked as if someone had stood, then sat, then stood again 5 seconds later. The effect stitched an uncanny continuity between my present actions and a trailing set of behaviors that I could not quite touch. I realized, with a cold sort of clarity, that there were 2 tempos in the house, mine and the house's, and they were not synchronized. I decided to leave. The top door, my doorway to the ordinary world, stood slightly ajar, light spilling through as an invitation. A shadow sat in that spill and did not move. It was not a person shaped by limbs. It was the suggestion of one, a pooled concentration of watching. When I took 2 steps toward it, my legs felt like they had been planted in cool clay. The watching in the doorway did not need to rise. It considered me and kept its seat. For the first time all night, fear was sharp and precise, but also threaded with recognition. It was the look I'd given myself in the mirror a dozen mornings after strange nights. I tried the stubborn human tricks, splash water on my face, recite addresses, count backward from a prime number. Each measure made sense of the moment for a breath, and then surrendered to the deeper hush. Then the lights in the basement juttered not a full return of brightness, but a series of small acknowledgments, like coughs of old wiring. In that, irregular strobe the mirror on the workbench caught me perfectly. The face in it moved its lips when I didn't. The smile was not malicious. It was attentive, patient. The smile of someone studying their own penmanship. I left the house as dawn pressed like a hand against the windows. I locked the front door behind me, though the lock clicked, as if replying to a habit I taught it. Outside, the world was ordinary garbage trucks, a neighbor's radio. I walked to the corner and turned back. Through the glass of my own dark front window, I watched the upstairs light go on, watched the shape of the house sit in its usual benign way. I did not know whether the thing in the mirror had learned to be me, or if I had learned to leave parts of myself down there on purpose. Either answer felt like a beginning.